Okay, so when we're working with a polar coordinate system, as opposed to the coordinate system we're all used to, the Cartesian or rectangular coordinate system, or whatever you want to call it, any point we're given, any coordinate we're given, is going to be based not on the x and y position, but on the r and theta position. Let's say we have a point right here. In a Cartesian coordinate system, we would represent the position, the coordinates of this point, by taking its x position, its location on the x-axis, and its y position, its location on the y-axis, so that they connect to each other like this, kind of like a rectangle, which is part of the reason why that one's called a rectangular coordinate system. In the polar coordinate system, however, we'll find that point using angles. So the r here, that's the radial position of the coordinates. That is going to be like a radius, like the distance to that point from the origin. So that would represent this line right here, pointing at the point from the origin. While this theta is the angular coordinate, which tells us the angle that this radial coordinate, this radial line has to be at in order for the arrow, for the radial coordinate, to be pointing at the point. So this is cool and all, but if someone gives us a pair of coordinates in polar coordinates, how would we convert that into rectangular coordinates? Like if someone gave me the coordinate 2 pi thirds, for example, that's 2 in the r direction, like 2 units in the r direction, like say meters or whatever, and pi thirds radians away from the x-axis. If someone gave us this coordinate, how would we repeat that in terms of a rectangular coordinate system or a Cartesian coordinate system? How would we make that conversion? Well, fortunately, that conversion is pretty easy to make so long as we take this diagram that I've drawn here and look at it like a triangle. If we think of like this as the x component of the triangle, and then this is the y component, then all of us, and we think of it as though we just want to find the lengths of these x and y segments, then it becomes clear to us that this can be looked at as a problem of simple geometry. We can use our trig functions, sine and cosine, to find the lengths of x and y in terms of theta and r. This is essentially a right triangle in which the length r is our hypotenuse. So we can take the cosine function. Remember, cosine of an angle is equal to, it's adjacent over hypotenuse. So in this case, the adjacent is x, and the hypotenuse is r. And similarly with the sine function, sine of an angle, sine of theta, is opposite over hypotenuse. So the side opposite to theta is the y. So it's the y over r. So if we want to solve for x and y, we'll have to just take these r's and multiply them by both sides of the equations. So x is equal to r times the cosine of theta, and y is equal to r times the sine of theta, because this will give us the y component of this line of r, whereas taking the cosine will give us the x component of r. And so this is basically it. These are what we'll want to use. If we are given the polar coordinates 2 pi over 3 radians, and we want to convert that into Cartesian coordinates, then for x, we'll just take 2 and multiply that by the cosine of theta. So that's 2 times the cosine of pi over 3. And the cosine of pi over 3 radians is equal to 1/2. So 2 times 1/2 is just 1. And then for y, that's 2 times the sine of pi over 3 radians. And the sine of pi over 3 radians is equal to the square root of 3 divided by 2. So again, the 2's will cancel out, and we're just left with the square root of 3. So in rectangular coordinates, the location of this point can be written as 1, radical 3. And we've just done a simple basic conversion that way. And that is essentially how we convert from polar coordinates into rectangular coordinates. If you want, you can go ahead and click out of this video, but because I've been getting into coding and Python again lately, I feel like showing this off anyway, because why not? Here's a simple little Python program I made while practicing. I'm still learning the basics. A simple little program I made where when you run it, you can input polar coordinates and it'll give you what the rectangular coordinate is. So let's say I want to find the rectangular coordinates for a radial coordinate of 4 units and an angular coordinate in degrees of 45 degrees. Then it gives you the Cartesian coordinates. So yeah, so it's an easy enough calculation to make that you shouldn't need a program like this to give you the answer basically, but a fun little thing I did that I wanted to show off, and if you want to play around with it, I will post a link to I'll paste a link to the GitHub page where I put the code in the description below. Though you'd have to run it on a mod, something like Idle or Google Colab or whatever. But that's all. I just wanted to show that off. Bye-bye. Have a good night, everyone.